Basketball has had over 60 rule changes since its original 13 rules. Today, I will be talking about everyone's favorite sport and the sole reason why you actually came to the University of Kansas: basketball. The game of basketball is ever-changing and will continue to change as time goes on. I have been playing basketball since the 3rd grade and have had to follow the rules ever since. I have also been watching, reading, and researching the game of basketball since I could ever remember. First, I would like to talk about the creation of basketball. A man named Dr. James Naismith created the game we know as basketball. Basketball was originally created as a recreational activity for the football players to stay in tip-top shape in the off-season in 1891. It was created in Springfield, Massachusetts as a winter substitute for gymnastics because male athletes were complaining. The physical educational director came up with a less rough activity that allowed safe play for athletes in their off-season. The original play of basketball was made out to be played indoors and during the nighttime in the long winter months. The basketball was lightweight and somewhat larger than a volleyball. The goal was to get the ball into a basket on the opposite side of the playing surface, which was approximately 10 feet high because that was the height of the track that circled the gym. Players were allowed to run freely if they did not have possession of the ball and try to receive a pass from an immobile teammate with the ball. Once the pass was completed to the player, now with the ball, was no longer able to move until he passed it or made an attempt to shoot it. It was originally played with anywhere from 3 to 40 players on each team, depending on the playing surface. Here are some of the original 13 rules. A major component of the game was to eliminate roughness, as I stated before. With this being said, any player committing a foul will be penalized, and upon the second foul, he shall be disqualified until a basket is made. Rule 7 stated that 3 consecutive fouls count as a basket. Rule 9 was out of bounds, and a 5-second delay resulted in a foul. These are all very basic rules that I'm sure you can see don't make up the game we see today. There are also some flaws in these rules that will be changed over the years, as most basketball fans already know. But I will discuss the major rule changes from this early stage of the game that developed into what we know. The introduction of the basketball was introduced in 1892. New out-of-bounds rules were put in place in 1913 to avoid unchristian-like conduct. The NCAA tournament also began in 1939. The goaltending rule was enforced in 1944 because 2 individuals, George Mikan and Bob Kurland, who were nearly 7 feet tall. This is now probably all sounding a lot more like the game we have come to know and love. All the changes I've just talked about were put in place to help the game. But as with anything in life, there can always be improvements made. These are some of the suggested changes that we could be seeing in the future for our beloved sport. John Adams, the NCAA National Coordinator of Officials, upon evaluating referees, said they make the correct calls 90% of the time for all infractions. He also said that when evaluating blocks and charging calls, officials can only make the correct call 65% of the time. He later went on to say that after evaluating 100 blocks and 100 charging calls from last year's NCAA tournament, that only 25% of those calls were found to be inconclusive, even in slow motion replay. Next, I will be talking about the suggested changes to this problem of inaccurate and inconclusive calls. Before the player with the ball becomes airborne, the defender must have 2 feet planted stationary outside the arc and be directly facing his opponent to draw a foul. Secondary defenders that move into the shooter or slide sideways in front of the shooter after the shooter is airborne should be charged with a shooting foul. In conclusion, I talked about the creation of basketball. Then I explained the major changes that have been made to the game of basketball. And finally, I talked about the possible future changes to the game. The game of basketball is ever changing and will continue to change as time goes on. Basketball is arguably, especially Jayhawk basketball, the most exciting and entertaining sport to watch, but it is only the way it is now because of the way the game has developed over time. Thank you.